Tim, thank you for joining me here. I really appreciate the time here. I've been looking forward to meeting you. I know we've run in a few of the same circles here as far as books and rock and authors and things like that. So first, thanks for joining me. And I want to get into the books and all that because I absolutely love them. But I wanted to first talk about your journey to becoming an author. And because I know you were in broadcasting for a while, and I know you're a huge music fan. I've read a few interviews, listened to some podcasts, and I really appreciate your encyclopedic knowledge.
Oh, well, it's nice to have an avenue for it. And thank you very much for having me on, Steve. This is great. Yeah. Yeah, we have been like ships of the night with a lot of the same, we have Eric booked on rock, mutual
Sure.
friend and yeah, well, I the author thing is quite by accident, but we'll get to that. Yeah, I've been a lifelong music fan and ever since I started kind of buying my own music, I've always while I'm listening, I'll look at the liner notes, I'll read the credits and look who produced the album and look where it was recorded and what label it was on. I just always would do that. Not It wasn't like I must learn this. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know what makes this music tick. What is it that makes it so good? What are the ingredients? The ingredients have to be in here somewhere. So yeah, lifelong, music fan, lifelong reader. And I went to when I graduated from high school, I then took a 2-year radio course up here in Canada, and that got me a job at my local radio station. I was there for I'd say about a year and a half. Mid 90s, the industry changed an awful lot
Oh
with
yeah.
automation starting to come in. So essentially I was out of the radio game and just get jobs, other just regular jobs, right? And never really thought I'd get back into it, but then fate intervened, and it just so happened that 13 years later I got back on at my local radio station, and somehow I've remained employed in radio one way or another since then. Now, it's been quite a long time since I've actually been on the air, but I'm a commercial writer, so I'm more of a behind the scenes person. But so that's kind of been that side of things. I started my YouTube channel, Tim's Vinyl Confessions, back in 2014 as a way of showing off my collection and basically talking about the bands and the music that I love. And I've really wanted to talk about bands that not every channel was talking about. So I really wanted to talk about the likes of Y&T and Coney Hatch and these bands that are beloved by rabid
Right.
fans. There just aren't as many of them, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that, and through that, I've met a lot of cool people that do, that have other channels. But really, it really got going, I hate to say, during the pandemic, because that's when we all discovered Zoom and
Right.
StreamYard and
And we had
all of these.
time, more time. A
We
lot of
had
us had more
time
time.
and the technology, the reason for it sucked, but the technology made it such that, if I wanted to have a co-host, we didn't have to be in the same room. We didn't have to be in the same country. So that really opened doors for me. And I have to say that a really pivotal moment was getting to meet Martin Popoff,
Sure.
who I've been a longtime fan of his books, a fellow Canadian,
Yep.
and I'm really happy to somebody I can call a friend nowadays. But I had Martin on my show. I think the beginning of 2021. We appeared on a show together on the Rush Fans channel. Um, and After that show was done, I thought, you know what? If I'm going to have him on the show, I'm going to message him now while he still remembers, because he gets probably a million messages a day,
Right.
right? And he was up for it. He came on, and what I wanted to talk to him about, and this eventually led to my first book, was of all things, 8-track tapes. I wanted to know what his memories of when they started to disappear from the store shelves, and what he just remembered about that changeover. And we got to the end of that conversation, and he said, I think you've got a book idea here. And I remember thinking, if Martin Popoff thinks I got a book idea here, I think he's
Right.
probably right. So that led to what eventually became Unspooled, an adventure in 8 tracks, which was my very first book. Now, when that first came out, that was a Kickstarter campaign. It was very much self, a self-published book, although someone that I have to give a lot of thanks to is a guy that's been a friend of mine for decades, Matt Phillips. He's a designer. He has a company called Go North Design. If it wasn't for him, these books wouldn't exist. But just an excellent designer and really good eye for detail. And the reason these books look as good as they do, he's helped me with all of my
They,
books.
yeah, they do look great. I want to get into that as well. So,
Yeah. So that came out, and as a Kickstarter campaign, I would say it did very, very well. We sold over 100 of these. It was on such an obscure topic, but the book is a great coffee table book. And if you're a fan of music, if you grew up in the 80s and you just like reading stories about collectors, it's a book that you can pick up. You don't need to have like what do I care about 8-track tapes? You don't need to. It's more than that. But there is a lot of content in there, specifically about how the record clubs kept manufacturing titles on 8-track all the way through
right.
1988, which is something a lot of people still don't
Mo Most people don't know
realize
that. Yeah, I
that
didn't
that
realize that.
that they kept making them. Why? I don't know, and why they eventually stopped. I don't know that either. But I tried to chronicle all of the known titles that existed. So that was a success, I would say. We sold well over 100 copies of that, which is, phenomenal. It really exceeded expectations. Now, that was a Kickstarter campaign. That meant physically ordering the books, getting them sent, and then packaging them up,
Right.
sending
You
them
were your
out.
own distributor. You were
Well,
the
yeah,
right.
it was a lot of work. I mean, it was a labor of love. But then another author that I got to know who I admired is Julian Gill from Kiss FAQ.
Yep.
He's written a lot of great books, and he did a book. Um, I'm looking right at it now called Mask Hysteria. It has to do with their Australian tour in 1980. Uh,
Right. Yes.
and
Yeah.
that he put that out through Amazon. And I said, how did you do that? Like, how does that work? Because I don't think that was an option when we first did Unspooled. And he kind of talked us through the process. So the first thing that we did was we brought Unspooled over to Amazon, which, look, some people like it, some people don't. For me, as this is not my job. This is, you could call this a side hustle. It's a fun
Right.
one,
Sure.
but this is not how I make my living. Uh, it takes a lot. It takes like you don't make as much per book, but you don't have to worry about the shipping. You don't have to worry about returns. You don't even have
It's
to worry about it's all within whatever it's Amazon all over the
right.
world. So whatever country you live in, it's print to order. So there's no back stock
It's the most efficient
and
way to get your book to readers
it
all
works.
around the world.
All I
Yeah.
can tell you is that it's worked for me. So I put that out. We sold a few more copies of that. And then I got thinking, well, okay, now that I know that we don't have to go through all of that again with the Kickstarter, because I always thought, well, that was fun. I got a book. I have a book. It's got my name on it. I didn't think I'd do another one. I really didn't. I didn't think, but then I got thinking, well, okay, if I'm going to do another one, how am I going to do this? And I'll bring up Martin Popoff again because he has a series of books that he's done called Album by Album,
I know
and
him very well.
yeah, and those the one he did on Queen is one of my favorites of all of his books. I don't know how many times I've read through that,
Same.
and the format is such that it makes me want to go listen to the albums I'm reading about. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. I can do something like that. And there was no question who that first band was going to be that I was going to do a book on, or if I was going to do another one at all. It's going to be Y&T. Y&T are one of my favorite bands ever, and I have never been able to comprehend why that band did not become a
We,
huge worldwide successful rock band.
Man, we are on the same page. We're going to get into that
Yeah, I've
for sure.
just
The book is down for the count, the Y&T album review, and also Sing Me Away, the Night Ranger album review. And we're going to discuss those, but I got to tell you, first off, one, I absolutely love the format of both these books, where you and a panel of fans slash experts discuss each album song by song. What I really dig about is one, you guys are all very you're objective. You've got, there's good, the bad, the ugly, the critiques. You're very honest in their opinions, but also I got to tell you, these are the conversations I love to have. Not only love to read, but these are conversations like I would love to be in that panel. I feel like I'm could, you know, so many times when I've read through both the Y&T book and the Night Ranger book, I thought, wow, I know exactly what he's talking about. I totally agree with that. Sometimes I didn't agree, but I know where he's going with that thought. But what I want to ask you was, as far as the logistics, because with each of these books, you've got all sorts of different people weighing in for in each chapter. Like I said, album by album, song by song. But so what were the logistics of this? How were the conversations? Were they Zoom calls and you transcribed them? Were they emails? Because to me, it reads like it's a bunch of people sitting around a table, all weighing in, having a few beers, which I love.
The answer is yes to all of the above. Yeah, once I decided I was going to do this, I talked to Martin about it. Well, first thing I asked him was, "Look, are you planning on doing a Y&T book?" And he said, "No." He said, "I really only like the early stuff." He said, "But someone ought to." I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it." I said, "I'm thinking about doing one in the style of your album by albums." He said, "Well, I'll take part, if you want to." I said, "Yeah, great." So anyway, yeah, the idea is that you get a group of people, and it's like you got a bunch of people sitting around talking about music and talking about a particular album. I ask a series of questions or a series of statements. They're not always yes and no questions. They're not always formed like a question, but per studio album. And I ask a diverse group of people, however many people I can get involved, and I get their answers back. Now, sometimes they type out their answers and send them to me, so that's good. And then sometimes we do a Zoom call because some people are more comfortable doing that. And then I sit and transcribe the conversation and I edit it to make one answer flow into the next to make it sound like we're all together and we're all
Right.
talking about it. And there's a lot of editing. Like I don't put words in people's mouths and I don't change the meaning of what they're saying, but I make it sound more conversational and I make it sound as intelligent as I can make everybody sound. And and that's basically how it goes. I start to catalog those and keep track of how many I've got per album. First thing I do is I ask a bunch of people that I've been on shows with, people that have been on my show, there's people that I've known anyway that like a particular band. This is what I'm doing. It's not out, so don't say anything about it. Are you interested in taking part? And the first thing I'll say is, look, um, tell me what albums you'd most like to talk about, and I'll try to fit you in. Once those get full, it might be like, look, if you want to be in the book, I've got this one, and this one left. Are you interested?
Right.
So, and I don't care if someone's been a fan from the beginning. I don't care if someone's seen them 100 times in concert or if they've never seen them in concert. And if they just discovered them 2 years ago via YouTube, if they like them and they're willing to listen to an album and answer some questions, it's all valid. I've got
That's a
fans of
real
all different
that's a real
types.
important part of that because I noticed in the Night Ranger book, and maybe it was also the Y&T book, but I really like that the fact that there was a couple people there that were relatively new to the band that went back and discovered an album that they didn't even know existed, and so that was like a really fresh take for me, and I really appreciated that. That not everybody does it that way.
Well, I mean, you can't help being the age you are. I mean, I got into Y&T when 10 came out in 1990. I I had to go back and I loved doing that. I love getting into a band that's got a rich back catalog. Now,
Yeah,
the problem with Y&T is that it was so hard to track them all down
yeah,
pre-internet. But but yeah, if somebody is willing to give it a shot and they say, "Hey, I like this," yeah, I'll take part. So that's fantastic because I don't want everybody answering the same. I don't want everybody saying, "I think this album is incredible." Somebody was saying, it's okay. It's okay. I think they have better ones." We're all fans and we're all coming at this from a fan's perspective, but I did not want a bunch of yes people. I wanted people to form their own opinions. Sometimes that I've totally disagreed with some of the people's opinions, but I respect them.
right.
And because, a lot of people that swear by Y&T, they'll all talk about the early stuff and they don't like the Geffen years. Well, that's where I got on board.
Sure.
So, there's all types of fans, but we're all in this because we're all Y&T fans.
Right.
And a band that had been around that long, yes, they had a wonderful documentary done on them called On With the
Fantastic
Show.
documentary. I watch it once a year.
One of the best
So
rock
good.
docs ever. And that's even if you don't go into all the
Right.
extra footage on there. I thought I knew a lot about that band, but watching that documentary, I didn't know there were guys in the band before their first album that left.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So they have that, but there's never been a book on them, really? Ever? And so that's just wrong. Like there's got to be a book about these guys. Somebody has got to sit down and do this. And I was more than happy to be the guy that did it. And this was a real trip because along the way, the coolest things happen, the coolest things fall into place. I was emailing people that had connections to the band somehow. I
Hmm.
wanted this to be by the fans for the fans, but I did want to try and talk to people that were involved somehow with Y&T. Now, one guy that I messaged that I wanted to talk to that I never heard back from was John Taylor Dismukes. Now, John Taylor Dismukes is an art director, and he did Black Tiger, Mean Streak, and Rock We Trust, the best of 81 to 85, and eventually the Face Melter album. Very distinctive look to his
Oh,
art.
yeah.
He did a couple Keel albums. He did Lynch Mob, Winger. Like people that know artwork know
Yeah,
the name John Taylor.
he was a real in-demand guy, and those
Yeah.
especially
Um,
Black Tiger, Earthshake. What did you say? Black Tiger and
Black Tiger, Mean
Mean Streak.
Streak.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean those.
fantastic
I mean
covers.
they're just their art.
Yeah.
And I messaged him, never heard back. That's fine. But another guy that I messaged just on off the cuff, thinking I would never hear back, is Hugh Syme. Now, in addition to Y&T, I also happen to be an enormous Rush fan, and Hugh Syme has done everything for that band from their third album onwards. All the album covers, all the concert posters, the tour books, the T-shirts. He's the
Wow.
guy. Um, and he did Contagious. He did the Contagious album cover. Lo and behold, he emails me back. So we end up talking on the phone. And through the conversation, he says, Tim, do you have anybody designing a book cover for this for you? And I thought, is Hugh Syme asking me if I want him to design my little book cover? Anyway, we talked about it. He gave me a really generous deal, which I'm sure is well below minimum wage for someone of his stature. I mean, he's like Roger Dean or
Yeah.
like he's a rock star in terms of. I mean, people that that are into hard rock and metal, 70s, 80s, 90s hard rock and metal. You might not know the name Hugh Syme. You might not be a Rush fan, but I can almost guarantee you've got something in your collection that he designed, whether it's Bon Jovi's New Jersey, whether it's Whitesnake 1987 or Slip of the Tongue, Kiss Revenge, a bunch of Queensryche album covers,
Yeah. Oh,
Megadeth.
his resume is so
Like
long.
sometimes he just worked with a band for one album, sometimes he worked with them for a stretch. In the case of Y&T, he did the Contagious album cover. That was a direct result of the success of the Whitesnake album. He did a lot of album covers for Geffen and John David Kolodner, and Contagious was one of them. So he comes back with this beautiful steampunk
Yeah.
design that
Yeah.
it was just perfect. And the best part about it is if you look really close on top of the T, you can see a vial or a beaker of some sort of
Yep.
fluid. Well, that is a nod to Contagious, which he
Contagious,
also
sure.
designed. And I didn't notice that for the first little while. I'm like, oh, that is even cooler now. So that there's no question that got people's attention. Cover artwork by Hugh Syme. That means a lot in our world. So it was just the perfect thing to launch this with. And I got to say, still my biggest selling book by a pretty wide margin.
Wow.
People
You you filled a
were
great niche, man. This
well,
is
people
something.
were waiting for this, right?
Right.
I always look at I put out books that I myself would like to read, and I perceive a deficit and I fill that deficit. Look, I love Kiss. I'm a huge Kiss fan.
Same.
What am I going to write about Kiss?
There's it's been done, right?
I've got no new angles for a Kiss
Right.
book, okay? I want to write about these bands that nobody's written about or very few people have written about. That's why my next book was on the band Kansas because I love that band. That's also a panel book. Then I did one on Sammy Hagar's solo albums. That one was just me. I wrote that one all myself. And so when it came around time to do the Night Ranger book, which is my current book, um, I said, "Yeah, we're got to do an album album by album format. And I really pushed it this time because I've got more panelists per album in this book than any other. This is the longest book I put out. It's almost
Right.
300 pages long. I've got 10 panelists per chapter of Night Ranger's albums. And that's the other thing. I don't think people realize how many albums they have. I don't
Yeah.
not enough people realize. Yeah, not only do they have a lot of they're still making music. They've
And
never really stopped making music, and the last few albums they've done are all
stellar.
really good. Like
Oh
they're
man.
all very, very strong albums. These are not phoned in albums by any
No.
stretch.
And
You're talking about a band that's three-fifths intact of their classic lineup. They were successful, but they should have been more successful. Like
right.
Y&T should have been a superstar
On
band.
I'll tell you on my and I bet you have this mental list or maybe you wrote it down on my like long mental list of bands that should have been huge and as big as their contemporaries at the same time. Y&T is at the top of the list. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
they had it all. I mean,
To me, like,
Meniketti's a guitar hero, an amazing vocalist. They had the songs. They more or less had the look when they needed it a lot of times, and just they did not catch the right breaks, and it will
so
forever sadden me because they so deserved
yeah,
it.
yeah. They and the sad thing is that of the original, the original recording lineup, Dave's the last man standing. I
Yeah,
mean, we lost Phil, and then we lost
Leonard.
Leonard, and then we lost Joey. But Dave's still out there. He's still doing it. He's fought cancer off, and he's still doing it. He still sounds for a guy his age, he's doing it. He's pulling it off.
You know
When
what I
there are
love?
guys that are 10, 15
Oh,
years younger than him that can't do it at
that
all
can't do
anymore
it at
and
all.
really, really, really should stop.
Exactly. We
So,
know who they are. We won't say
yeah.
them. I'll tell you
But
one thing I like about Y&T is that this current, obviously, as you mentioned, three-fourths of the band no longer with us. But unlike a lot of bands that are constantly changing everybody else who's not original or many times over the years, Y&T, this current lineup has been intact now for a
yeah,
good number of years,
that
which I appreciate.
this is not a band that yeah, this is not a band of just constantly changing members. John Nyman officially joined the band in 2003, but he'd been involved with them behind the scenes since the early to mid 80s. I
Which
mean,
I
he
didn't
goes
know until I
yeah,
read your book. I
he
knew I
goes
saw him
way
on some
back with them.
credits, but I didn't
You've
know how
seen
involved he was.
well, okay, have you ever seen well, I've got it actually for another show. I've got it right here. You ever seen this live at the San Francisco
I have
Civic?
it. Yep, I have it.
Well,
He
it's not pictured on here, but when you see the robot guy come
Rock.
out, Rock the Robot, that's
Yeah,
John Nyman.
which I did not know until
John
I read your
Nyman wore
book.
that costume. He did a lot more than that too,
Yeah.
and I've had the pleasure of having John on my show and Aaron Lee, their current bass player. I had them both on. That was a thrill. But yeah, John's been in the band since 2003. Mike Vanderheel's been their drummer since 2006. And the only reason, they obviously Phil Kennemore passed away. He was replaced by Brad Lang. Brad's in my book too. I talked to Brad. Brad had some issues, which he's been very public about, and then Aaron stepped in. I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. He's been, they're not a band like some bands. It's like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, are you serious about doing this or not? Because when you're constantly changing, it's like you don't just learn the songs. You've got to play together. You got to
Right.
gel. And
Right.
so, these guys consistently, they've had nothing but great players in their lineup. I mean, I got into the band when it was the Steph Burns, Jimmy DeGrasso lineup. To me, the easiest comparison I can make, that's like Kiss with Eric Carr or Eric Singer and Bruce
And
Kulick. It's
good
not the
point.
original, but man, are they good musicians. They
Right.
can play
Arguably
any
as good as the other guys.
they can play anything from any part of the catalog, and that's what these guys are like now. Um, but yeah, with Y&T, it's heartbreaking when you think about it, because to me, as far as American rock bands, they should have been right up there with Van Halen, Aerosmith, you name it. I mean, there were so many points in their career where they had the potential to break through in a big way.
Yeah.
And I think they had the wrong record label with A&M,
Oh, absolutely.
and I don't think they had high-powered management. And I think that you have to have all of these things need to fall into place at exactly the right time. There are so many what ifs. I've always said, I think most of us that are serious music fans, we've all got bands that we think should have been better, ones that got away. And then there's other bands, look, I like these guys, but I can see why they didn't break through. No, with Y&T, it's not just one time. I think that when Earthshaker came out, which for all intents and purposes, we might as well say that was their real official. I mean, I like the first two records, but they were
Hmm.
kind of their own thing. The name changed. I mean, it's the same band,
Right.
but I think that those albums, if the later ones had been successful, those earlier albums might have risen up or and sold more the way that the early AC/DC stuff did, for
Sure.
example. I can cite all these examples, but Earthshaker came out. They were beloved overseas by the new wave of British heavy metal crowd. They were considered sort of an honorary new wave of British heavy metal band because they were very much they were playing the circuit. They were getting played on BBC, and they were doing the all the
They were
they were there. They
they were
were
getting covered in Kerrang magazine. They
yeah,
were they were part of that.
there were boots on the ground. They went over and played. They did the Pink Pop Festival. And um if Earthshakers I don't know if it would have been a commercially successful album because it's a pretty heavy album
Hmm.
for 1981, even though Rescue Me was a huge hit in the Bay Area. Um but one thing that really irks me, and we talk about it in the book a lot, and it could be if you had to name one thing, even if it was A&M, if there was one thing that they did the most wrong, it's not letting them do any videos until the Bean Streak album. Because MTV went on the air in 1981 and MTV was starving for video content to play.
Yeah.
And they played a ton of artists that were on A&M Records. They had Joe Jackson and 38 Special
Right.
and Split Ends, and they had all kinds of bands that were on it. Styx. Uh, so if they'd have said, "Oh, here's some money, go shoot a couple soundstage videos for say Rescue Me," I don't know, and then maybe when Black Tiger came out, do one for Don't Want to Lose, MTV would have played them.
Right. And the
MTV would have had to have played them because they would have been great. Here's some more videos because people don't understand how limited their video.
right.
Uh, look at the list of the first videos played on MTV. You can look that up on
Sure.
Wikipedia. Pretty easy. It's all over the place. They're playing live April
Right.
Wine videos. They're playing REO Speedwagon. They're playing like Kate Bush. They're playing. And
The other
it's all over the place, right? So they
yeah,
would have played Y&T. They would have played Y&T, and then all of a sudden Y&T could have been somewhere where they've never played before
right.
and been recognized. Look what
The
those. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was going to
Go
say the
ahead.
other thing about the videos is that even before MTV, there were bands that made videos, but they used them overseas because they couldn't get over there
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
throughout the 70s, bands did promo videos,
they did. I
and
mean, London
to a
Records,
degree, it
though,
went to
like,
Japan and Europe, and it was a
yeah.
representation of the band.
Oh, how great would it have been
It
to
would have
have
been
some
oh
early footage of that band? I mean, there's some, but there's
live
not a
footage.
lot.
Yeah,
But London Records was even worse, I'm gonna say. Like London Records was
right.
they were barely a label as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
You know,
no
but
distribution. It was a mess.
no, I mean, yeah, ZZ Top were both the only successful rock band I can think of on that label, and then of course they jumped ship to Warner Brothers and they laughed all the way to the bank. But anyway, um, but with A&M, they really should. I mean, they really should have let them do videos for Earthshaker and Black Tiger, and then when Mean Streak came around, they should have let them do more than one video. And so here's kind of my point too. They let them do one video for Mean Streak. And what happens? They have their very first charting album. So you can't tell me that didn't make a difference. Yes, it only hit like 103 on Billboard, but it charted. It was the first time
And at
they'd
that
ever
time,
had an album.
right. At that time, they're a developing artist. They're new.
Yeah.
Clearly the video made an impact. So what would any other label normally do? Come out with another video, bring another song out
Give
there.
them videos. And then from then on, from Mean Streak, they should have let them do at least one more video. And then when In Rock We Trust came out, okay, they did two videos from that. They should have done four
Hmm.
because In Rock We Trust actually caught on. It almost went gold.
Right.
So now,
That's where I first got into them
so
because somebody played me "Don't Stop Running," and
yeah,
all I
I
needed to
mean,
hear it was once, and I was off to the races.
Don't
And
Stop Running is probably the quintessential Y&T song. I think it's
yep,
got everything that makes this band tick. It's heavy and it's melodic and it's got a pop sensibility, but it rocks. It's a good example of Dave's guitar playing. It's a good example of their harmonies. It's an incredible song.
Yep.
Now, I don't think a song like that would have been a huge pop hit, but it could have made inroads. It should have done better on mainstream rock, and it could have
Yes.
been a minor top 40 single. I mean, if you think about that time period, 1984, Bon Jovi's Runaway was kind of a heavy song for top 40 airwaves. It hit 39. So
Yeah.
Don't Stop, Turn Up the Radio by Autograph was a hit, a minor hit. So there's no reason that Don't Stop Running or even Lipstick and Leather couldn't have hit. And then they should have put out, I think, I'll Keep on Believing. That could have been a bigger song for
Oh,
them.
right.
And they should have put out This Time. And it was a ballad, like a power ballad. Oh, like so many missed opportunities. Like
Yeah.
it's like A&M. I mean, there was promo, but there just wasn't enough. Here's a band, they finally give you the album you've been waiting for, and it gets to 46. Like it's just so close to, and
Yeah.
it's somewhere, it's got to be very, very close to gold status, right? So the situation we're in is pretty good, right? Things are looking up. Then they come out with the strange, convoluted story of Summertime Girls.
Yes.
They finally write the hit song that they've been breathing down their necks for. One exec doesn't even like the song, kicks the tape across the
That
parking
amazed me
lot.
when I read it in the book. I did, I didn't know that.
Well, I got that from the documentary, I think. I don't think I knew about that. But then another exec, same company, hears it, and this one had half a brain cell and said, wait a minute. They heard a live version of it and said, wait, what's that song? That sounds like a hit. So what did they do? They put it on a live album.
Strangest thing. I
Who is
back
going to
then.
make who is going to make their first purchase from a band a live album with a bunch of other songs they've never heard before? They should have said, "Guys, we need a studio album," or they should have tried to get that song on a soundtrack. Can
Yes.
you imagine? Because
Oh,
soundtracks were the king back
especially,
then.
especially, those, for lack of a better term, teen sex roms, right? I mean, that were all the
Yeah, like
rage in
the
the
the Brat
80s
the Brat Pack
or
movies,
something.
right?
Yeah.
Those. Now I know that the movie Real Genius with Val Kilmer. I know it's in that movie, but there's no soundtrack to that movie,
Right.
so there's another missed opportunity.
But you're
But
completely right that because I can
so
remember the live album came out and then that was on there and it was just even then I knew I'm like this is how do you follow up what was your biggest record to date with what could be your biggest single to date, the most commercial thing you've done, and it's stuck with a live record. I wanted to hear new
so
music.
so so then so the song does pretty well. Goes all the way to 55 on Billboard. I mean, it was their one and only entry in the Billboard Hot 100. I think it peaks at 16 on mainstream rock. Video got a fair amount of MTV play that summer. But it fell off the charts, and then they get them to stick it on their next album, Down for the Count, which didn't come out until November, way after that song had fallen off the
Right.
charts. They give it a terrible album cover.
Oh,
It's
their
pink.
worst one.
It's pink and black. They do not use like they got one of the coolest logos. They don't use the logo. The name of the band is practically invisible. So even if somebody wanted to go into a store, hey, I like that song, Summertime Girl, you can't find it.
No.
So they dropped the ball at every conceivable turn. And so now the band gets off A&M and they sign with Geffen Records. So I'm sure that the thought process was, okay, now it's going to happen.
That
We've
should have
got
been
a
the equivalent of a lottery ticket, right? Because
we've got
Geffen's
a
hot, you got Kolodner.
we've got a rock focused label. They brought Aerosmith back from the dead. They brought Whitesnake back from the dead, and it didn't happen.
Right.
Now here's the problem, and this is something that never would have entered my mind again until I saw the documentary. Contagious comes out in 1987. Should have been a huge hit. That should have been a huge across the board hit. It was perfect for the times. It is ear candy.
Oh,
But here's the problem, and I've said this many times. They have nothing to. There was nothing on that album to follow it up with. There was no slam dunk hit. I think there's good songs on Contagious. I don't think there was anything that catchy. So I'm pretty sure all the Geffen execs said, "Great." Once they heard that song, they say, "We got it," and it didn't happen. Oh well.
right. And that's our
On
one
to the
chance.
next project.
That
Next thing, and also they've been around for a long time and within the industry. And Dave even said that radio programmers and people in those positions of power were saying, these guys again, really, they're still trying to. So their experience was actually working against them where it should have been a plus. All of these things just add up to one of the most frustrating situations where you have a band that's so talented, so versatile. They could play heavy rock. They dipped their toes in the pop metal thing, and they did it all right because Dave's a great singer. They could pull that stuff off. Um,
Let me ask you
and
this
they,
about Contagious. So I can remember seeing this very visibly, and I was happy they did it because I thought they fit more in, right? I was sad to see Leonard go. I didn't know for all the reasons why he left, but you turn over Contagious, and the guys are all airbrushed.
yeah,
DeGrasso's a good looking guy. You compare that to the band photo on Down for the Count, and you could see where they were going. But I'm wondering if that, and maybe sound wise, especially with the title track, which I love, do you think that turned off some of those, the original hardcore fans that
I'm
stuck with them?
sure. Yeah, I'm sure it did. But I mean, if any band ever deserved a break,
It was them.
it was them. Um, but to a lot of people, that probably seemed like a new song when they first,
Hmm.
you know. But I don't think the guys look particularly. If you look at the photos inside Contagious, they don't look particularly comfortable in those clothes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, granted, it was a step up from the back cover of Down for the Count.
Yes.
I don't know whose idea it was to put Dave in a pink jumpsuit. I've never understood that.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, but here's another example, and I've used this example too of the difference that a label and management can make. And this is a band that I like, and I'm not slamming them in the least. But let's talk about Dokken for a second.
Hmm.
Here's a band. They weren't young. Don Dokken was 30 when Breaking the Chains came out. They weren't spring chicken. Don's the same age as Dave Meniketti. So, Tooth and Nail and Under Lock and Key and Back for the Attack, not one of those albums produced a top 40 single. The most successful song they ever had was Alone Again, peaked at all of 64. And yet, those albums all sold 1 million copies each. They were all platinum albums. And on the verge of breaking up, they put the live album Beast from the East out that still manages to go gold. No top 40 singles. They didn't know how to dress either. They looked
Right.
terrible in those videos. Those video, the Breaking the Chains video is so bad. And yet they sold millions and millions of albums. You can't tell me that Elektra Records wasn't putting the push on and
Right.
Q Prime Management wasn't getting them out there on the right
Well, that
tours.
was the thing. That was the magic.
So,
Dokken opened for everybody. I saw
yeah,
them a number of times. They opened for, so many big acts. So,
like Y&T opened for a ton of big acts, but it was either not a full tour or, for example, in 81, 82, they opened for AC/DC, but it was in Europe. So
yes,
it just, every turn of the wheel, it wasn't in Y&T's favor, and it always seemed like they were playing catch up.
I lived on the
And
East Coast then and only saw him once on the Theater of Pain tour opening up for Motley. The other tours through 10, they never made it
it's
past the
it's fun.
Mississippi.
It's funny you mentioned that because yeah, it was a very regional thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm in Eastern Canada, so they've never played. I mean, Canada was never a big market for them, and the closest they've ever played to me was the Theater of Pain tour opening for Motley Crue in Portland, Maine, which is about a 4 or 5 hour drive. Now, granted, I was 10 that year, but so
Right.
I'm just saying this is not
Yeah.
a band that I had ample opportunity. I've never seen them in concert, even now. They're one of my favorite bands, and I may never. But anyway, that's another. But but you got to go where the fans are. But it's just I never understood it, and as the more years have gone by, it's not like that's lessened any. It's like I listen to the stuff and I go, this stuff is still holding up
Oh, yeah.
incredibly well. Why? Why is it still obscure?
That's a good segue for one of the things I've really loved about the both books, that it made me go back and rediscover a couple of things. And a couple of records. In Y&T's case, I had not listened to kind of the post hiatus albums, if you will, right? So after 10, after Y&T Live, which 10, I absolutely top to bottom, I think Y&T 10 could be their best album. That's just
Oh,
my own
it's
opinion.
my favorite. But Grant, that's when I got into the band, so I got a
Sure,
real attachment to that.
sure.
But over the years, that hasn't really
But song
changed.
for song, sound wise, I love it. But post
Again,
hi,
should have been they could have gone so
oh,
many
yeah,
3 or 4 singles deep on that
yeah.
album. Grunge had not taken hold when that came out.
No, it was
It was a lot
1990.
90. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
carry on.
but so post hiatus, if you will, the band broke up for a little bit, but I went back thanks to your book and and I liked them, but again, it was a good reminder. I liked them. Musically Incorrect, Endangered Species, and Face Melter. Their last three records, a lot of years between them. We haven't had another Y&T out. Face Melter's
Yeah.
probably the last record. Is
Yeah.
going to be their last record, what, 15 years ago? But there's really good stuff on there. And that
Yep.
proved that, indie label, big label, they still had the passion to make the desire to make new music, which I want from my
I
favorite
I
bands.
was so excited when I found out that they, and I don't even know how I read it. It must have been Metal Edge because you never read anything about Y&T and you never heard anything about them. And then when I found out that there was a new album, it took me about a year before I could track down a copy of Musically Incorrect, and I was over the moon because I've done this so many times. I did it with Y&T and I did it with Night Ranger. I got into a band and then they break up. Because I didn't get into Night Ranger. I didn't start buying Night Ranger albums until the end of '89, and by that time they'd gone on hiatus. I didn't know that.
Right.
So, but so I'm like, okay, they're an active band again now. Indie labels, so they're now on an even smaller course. But I think something happened in those years, um, and I talk about it in the book too. It was kind of a leveling that happened because when grunge hit, all the bands got knocked down. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
even Def Leppard got knocked down from selling 10 million to gold status and to not even. But
It was a tsunami, man.
everybody took so. But when Y&T started playing again a lot around circa 2003 and started doing a lot of those like the cruises and the Rocklahomas and all those different bills, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, I like this band." And I think they kind of look at them as on the same level of success as some bands that maybe had a couple platinum albums, had two or three hit singles, and yet so they're kind of, I think they're looked at in a different way now. But that's by people that are way into this music, right?
Right.
There's still a lot of people out there, and I said it many times. If somebody likes this sort of 70s, 80s, maybe touch of blues, touch of metal, touch of commerciality, AOR. If you're into that kind of music, then all you need to do, as far as Y&T is concerned, is hear them.
Yeah.
All you need to do is hear them, and you'll hear what we're going on about and why we still talk about this relatively obscure band
Sure.
that has pockets of fans all over the world, but never had a gold record and never had a top 40 single. And yet here we are talking about they should have. They should
Yeah.
have had, and they shouldn't have just done it once. They should have done it several times.
Oh, absolutely. And with Y&T too, and the documentary showed this too, is that musicians knew. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Lars Ulrich,
musicians, yep,
Sammy Hagar, they knew. I mean,
they knew.
they,
Yeah.
especially, how great a drummer Leonard was, fastest foot ever, for God's sakes, those fills and his speed. And, Dave, you know, just what more superlatives can you say about him? Incredible
Well,
guitar player, incredible vocalist. And so I think that reputation has grown over the years.
yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with people, and this has always come up. And I think the fact that Dave was the lead singer and the lead guitar player, I think led to a little bit of, huh, that's different.
Nobody
You
else is
know,
doing it
well,
like
because
that.
because you didn't see him in the guitar magazines as much, right?
Hmm.
Because I think maybe they said, yeah, but he's the singer. You know what I mean? There wasn't a clear
Right.
cut singer and
It's a good
guitar
point.
player. He's not the only guy. I mean, it never hurt Tom Kiefer from Cinderella. He played most of their leads, but
Yeah.
that was a bit later. But you know what I mean? Like they kind of, I think, and yet when they talk about great singers, they're like, yeah, but he's a guitar player. So I don't know if and that's just it. We're grasping at straws.
Sure.
And then we think, well, was it the name? Did the name cause some confusion? Did that cause some confusion with filing or record stores not knowing where to put the albums? So we grasp at these things because it all comes down to the fact that it must have been something because it
Right.
wasn't the music.
No.
They had the music down. And Phil Kennemore even said that. I think it's in the liner notes, one of the reissues, that we goofed. We thought the music was important. But that's why you need the people that are representing you, whether it's your label or your management. It's like, we'll make the music. You need to get us out there to the world.
Right.
That's not our job.
Right.
Just like it's not your job to help us write songs or
Right.
um, sometimes those lines get blurred, but
Yeah. So
but
this is,
that's what I'm saying. We keep going on about it because, well, there must have been something. There must have been
yeah.
this one little thing that didn't fall into place.
Right. So this is a good segue into Night Ranger because there's some things in common, of course, that I know you know, but both are from the Bay Area, both melodic hard rock bands, had their biggest hits in the 80s, right? Had a hiatus around the same time and came back and continued to tour and make new music. And again, um, you know, Sing Me Away, the Y&T album companion, um, you got a great panel of folks there, very objective. And again, there we go. And again, just like with the Y&T book, you remind me of that. A couple things. One, everybody, the early stuff is great. Of course, that's where the hits came from. But if you haven't listened to Big Life, you need to. If you're feeding off the Mojo, which didn't even have Jack Blades in it, is a really, really good record. And I agree with your panelist. I forgot that Hole in the Sun was such a weird curveball. That might be my least favorite Night
Yeah,
Ranger record.
that's a pretty good consensus among Night Ranger fans. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities in these two bands. Now, Night Ranger were much more successful, but again, I mean, they were more
Also
commercial
had
and
people leave, had some original
right.
members leave, and then
Yeah,
find stability later on after.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. No, and you're right. The hiatus was just about dead on. Uh, the the weird thing is with Night Rangers that they're more Night Ranger were sort of more commercial in their approach, more AOR. I always said that Night Ranger occupy this kind of strange place when it comes to classic rock bands because they weren't strictly hard rock. They weren't a hard rock band like say a Whitesnake or a Def Leppard or Scorpions or something like that. But yet they weren't Journey or REO
Yeah.
Speedwagon or Foreigner either. They were somewhere in between. Maybe that made them hard to market, but I think it was a plus because they could get on the radio easier than other bands, and yet
Hmm.
they could rock really hard when they wanted to. Um, but and they sold a lot of albums, but they should have. When you think about how good they were and how natural they sound on the radio, it's it's it kills me that they've never had an album go beyond single platinum. Like when you think about their certifications go like this: Midnight Madness is platinum. Seven Wishes is platinum. Big Life is gold, and the greatest hits eventually went gold. That's it.
I
Now
did
you
not
would
know they, huh?
now you would think that Midnight Madness, if nothing else, the fact that it had Sister Christian, a top five hit that has gone on to have a life of its own, isn't at least double platinum. Usually, an album that has a top five single on it is more than single platinum.
I'm kind of
So
shocked. I would have thought it did twice that much. I did not know it was
exactly
just
right. You'd
platinum
you'd
one
think
time.
you'd think that Dawn Patrol would have gone close to gold,
Hmm.
based on what came after it. And obviously, once you get on the smaller labels, it's just not going to happen. But
Right, right.
but the but the biggest album, I mean, Seven Wishes, it had a top 10 single and two more top 20 hits. That should be more than single platinum. Again, though, I'm going to bring up the record company. You've got MCA, which is maybe they did a little bit better than A&M did with Y&T, but they were not a hard rock centric
No,
label. They really weren't. They were a
no.
country label. They were an R&B label, and yes, they might have been the only offer coming, which is that sometimes that happens. But with going back to Y&T for a second, I always wonder what would have happened if instead of signing with A&M, like let the London Records period be as it was, but imagine if Y&T had signed with Atlantic or Elektra or Mercury or
Right.
or a label that knew or Geffen originally from the
Yeah,
start.
because
Um,
Geffen was strong in rock out with
well,
rock
I
in the
mean,
early '80s.
I mean, Geffen made none of Sammy Hagar's Capitol albums sold at all.
Yeah.
None of them certified. He gets on Geffen, he starts having gold and platinum records and top 40 singles. His music didn't change all that much. It really
No.
didn't. So, if Night Ranger, same thing. If they'd have gone, let's say, look, Damn Yankees was a huge second act for Jack Blades. That first album was double platinum, more than any of the Night Ranger albums
Isn't
sold.
that wild?
So imagine if Night Ranger had been on Warner Brothers from the beginning. So these are those.
Yeah.
Now they did all right. They did all right, and they did well enough so they can go out and tour some pretty mid-sized places. But see, to me, Night Ranger should have always been a headline act. They
Absolutely.
should never be a special guest for anybody because they're that good. And
Yeah.
as great. I mean, Sister Christian is an amazing song, and it's a song that will outlive us all. I just happen to think they've got at least a dozen songs that are equally as good. and that we should all be sick of hearing on the radio. Like
Right. Agreed.
they've got songs that radio should be playing to death
Agreed.
that are that good.
I
So I just think that they're here, but they should
yeah.
be way up here.
Yeah. I think when Night Ranger got wrongly tagged as quote unquote a ballad band because of that massive
Yeah.
success of Sister
It's
Christian.
the double-edged sword when you hit with a ballad.
Yeah.
Lots of bands have had hits with ballads, but they've had hits with rock songs that led up to that. And so that did a couple of things. So MCA said, "Well, this is the easy way. We can market this easier."
And Night
And we
Ranger
also
kind of did with you can still rock in America, right?
Well,
Part of
they got a
this.
lot of airplay. I was that was a song that I was surprised to learn later on that did not hit the top 40 because I thought that that was a bigger song than it
I would have
was.
thought that too. That was my first introduction.
I think it
Hearing it
I
on
think
rock radio.
I think I hit 51 at as high as it got.
Huh.
So again, I just don't think that MCA made that extra push. And again, why stop at 3 singles when you've got an album that continues to sell? Put out Passion Play as a single. Put out Let
Oh,
Him
great
Run.
song. Yeah, great
Let
song.
him run. I mean, like there's like Night Ranger. One of the things I love about them is that their music is just naturally positive. It's upbeat. It makes you feel good listening to it, whether it's a heavy song or whether it's a ballad or whether it's a more
Yeah.
a commercial minded song.
I am
And
fond of I am fond of saying, and I've comment on various YouTube videos and anywhere I can find that if one of maybe my all-time favorite Night Ranger song is "The Color of Your Smile," and
it's great.
I will tell everybody, I'm like, if that song doesn't put you in a better mood, you need to seek mental health help
That is a
because
summer that is a summer
it
like
should have been a hit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of twists and turns in their career that things should have gone better than they did, but they did okay, but they just should have done better. I think a lot of people think that they sold more albums than they did.
I sure did.
Um, but the sad reality is that they just didn't, and they were deserving of more than that, right? And also, I really could not believe that there'd never been a book on these guys. It's like this is a band that's like people every I shouldn't say everybody, but like I said, sister I bet you there's more people that know Sister Christian than know who sings it. It's just
Yeah.
one of those songs that's permeated pop culture
Yeah.
to that extent and that's not a bad thing. I mean, every band wishes they had a song that did that just penetrates in such a way, but
Yeah,
the
it's
problem
reminiscent of "Don't Stop Believing" because remember that a second life because of
yeah,
Sopranos. Sister
yeah,
Christian had a second life again post the big hit airplay time period with what's the movie?
Boogie Nights.
Thank you. Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but it's never been off, you know, radio airwaves.
No,
And it's like when it comes on, I will never change the channel when it comes on because you're still hearing Night Ranger on the radio, right? It's just that there's so many other songs that are so good. And there's so many other songs that charted that like why don't you hear Sentimental Street as much? I don't get it.
yeah,
But
I love that song.
I'm going all over the place here with this, but the problem is with a song like Sentimental Street is that the success of that song has outsized the success of the band that did it. So that's why they're in this unique position where it's up to people like us to say, yes, they had that song. They've got this one and this one and this one. And maybe you don't know it by the title, but give it a listen. And it's just about educating people, especially
Right.
with the latter day albums, right?
Yeah. Well, yes,
Especially,
your book totally does that because one, I mean, they've got 13 albums across their
yep,
career, I think it was. And
yep,
I will say, I think High Road, Don't Let Up, and The Band Played On are as good as anything that came before that. That they still have it. And the other thing that's really impressive is, and I had forgot about this until again, I'm reading the book, but they're one of the few bands that can produce themselves.
yeah,
And they, not every band can, I mean, they, besides a great sound that it's Night Ranger, obviously it's better than spending a ton of money on a big name producer. They don't need that. They get, they're efficient. They get what they, there's no crazy flights of fancy, arrangement wise,
yeah.
A&R wise. They've got a great, for lack of a better word, formula. And these last three records, man, I mean, they're among my favorites.
They've been on a really good run, and you're right. Sometimes self-producing, yeah, it's more than just getting a good sound. You've got to be able to be really brutally honest with yourself. It's like is this really a good song?
Right.
Can we do a better one? Boy, there aren't very many. There are a few where I go, man, that's just not them at their very, very best. But for the most part, they're killing it. They're going out there and they're doing these songs that in any other time could have been hit singles. And very few bands of their era are doing that anymore. Some bands just stop making music, and it's really sad.
That
Um,
depresses me the most.
but these guys, and I admire Frontiers Records because they've done a lot of good things for a lot of these classic bands and newer bands that are sort of working in this sort of classic thing. Like one of my favorite new bands is Inglorious. Not enough people know about them because they're just great. That's classic, like Whitesnake, Deep Purple, ad nauseum, whatever. But anyway, but there's a ceiling there. You're never going to see a Frontiers Records release in a Walmart. For lack of a better, you want these albums in plain sight of people. You want them to be on the end caps. You want them to be in stores that don't normally sell music. It's just a matter of getting them out there. And if you can't do that, then make people aware. And one of the most rewarding things that I've gotten out of all of my books, Steve, is when I've had people come back to me and say, "Look, I really enjoyed the book, and that's great. But what's even better is when they say, and I just ordered a couple of this band's CDs." That's, to me, mission accomplished.
Right.
That's all I ever wanted to do with my YouTube channel is spread the word about these lesser bands. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, AC/DC, yeah, Metallica, great. Y&T, like, take a little time and
Right.
explore and
It'll,
and 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 treat yourself to the best songs you've never heard before.
yeah, it'll be
You
worth your
know,
time, and you've got in those two books, you've got a great guide, right? I mean,
I
it's
think so.
they're
Yeah, I
record
mean,
guides as well.
they're made to tell people what kind of records you're in for, and yeah, and I definitely wanted to talk about Feeding Off the Mojo. That's like the black sheep of the Night Ranger catalog. The band themselves don't even acknowledge it. That came out at a really interesting time
Yeah.
because obviously Jack, Damn Yankees was kind of over, but Jack and Tommy Shaw were doing their acoustic thing. So Brad and Kelly had the name, so they got Gary Moon and they put out, look, I compare that album a lot to the 1994 Motley Crue album, the one with John Corabi on vocals.
Right.
I really like that album. Um,
Same here.
and Feeding Off the Mojo is kind of half that and half classic Night Ranger because Gary Moon sounds nothing like Jack. The songs that Kelly sings sound like classic Night Ranger to me. When I
Hmm.
hear a song like Precious Time or The Night Has a Way, to me, those could fit on any Night Ranger album in and around that period. But even if most of the songs don't really sound like the band that's on the cover, it's still a good album at a time when there weren't a lot of good melodic rock albums coming out. So um,
Right.
there was
And,
no way I wasn't going to talk about it.
right. And I can't believe, and I just found it. My one of my all-time favorite Night Ranger songs is the second song from Feeding Off the Mojo, Last Chance.
Oh,
That song is
that's another
incredible.
song. That's another song that could
Unbelievable.
have been 10 years ago. That could have been a radio hit. I could hear that all
Yeah.
over the radio.
Oh,
It's
it's
it's got
moody, it's
yeah,
atmospheric, it's got a gigantic hook, great
yeah.
guitars. Yeah.
The thing is with Night Ranger and something that I love about them, there's never anything calculated about this band. A lot of bands start off heavy and then they lighten up for radio play. Night Ranger just write the way they write. They don't
Hmm.
do depressing. And that's why Hole in the Sun is such a hard album to listen to because that's an angry album. You
It's
can
angry,
hear
and they
you,
were
you can hear
chasing
that
trends.
you can hear the tension on that album. They're not getting along with Jeff Watson. You could just hear it.
Yeah.
The chemistry has gone sour. No, I mean they're good musicians, so it's played well. It just doesn't sound anything like Night Ranger. I can't even. There's some parts where I can't even tell the vocals. The vocals are shouted, and
Yeah.
it's like this is not what I want to hear on a Night Ranger
And
album.
there was a couple guys in the panel that brought this up. There's a couple songs where you can tell they're chasing trends. It's like, well, that's kind of like a Nirvana riff there. You know what I mean?
And
Chasing
also, this is
chasing
this
trends
is
that are
two.
10 years too late.
Yeah, this is 2007. Like that
Right.
ship has sailed anyway, and it's so weird too because there's such a long gap.
Yeah.
In that first decade of the 2000s, they only did that one album, and I remember thinking, man, this is probably going to be it for them putting out new music, and what an awful way to stop. But man, oh man, did they prove me wrong, and I've
Well,
never been more happy because the four albums they did after that have been like, okay, now that was a phase they had to go through, right?
yeah.
Most bands have that, and another thing, like back to Mojo, a lot of bands have that outlier album, whether it's, Aerosmith's Rockin' a Hard Place or the Motley Crue album, or where there's a lineup change, or there's a really weird change, or Kiss Music from the Elder, or like there's an album that people either really like or they
I,
don't like at all, and they don't even like to talk about it.
I love what
That's
I love
that's
one of the
Night
guys.
Ranger's album. That
Yeah,
Mojo is that album for Night Ranger.
yeah, and Hole in the Sun. You just reminded me. One of the guys on the panel said that's the Hall Pass album,
Yes.
which I totally loved. And he
Yeah.
brought up the fact that a lot of those bands that he likes a lot of that era of that music. So he kind of some of those bands that were doing that. So he appreciated the turn that Night Ranger made there, which I could totally respect. I just didn't think they really had the songs there on that record. But
No,
I
that's
love what the
another
guy
thing.
said.
I know that, yeah, you can I can be surprised like by an album that like, boy, this is different, but I like the songs.
Right.
They didn't have the songs. And
No.
normally Night Ranger has the songs. You know what I mean? Like they could just
Yeah.
kick out these songs. Jack Blades is an amazing songwriter. I mean, there's a reason why you see his name on so many,
That.
other people's albums, because he tells these little 3.5, 4 minute stories. And I think that a lot of times his lyrics are above par for this
Hmm.
type of music. Like they're really thoughtful, and he
Yeah.
paints these little mini movies in your mind, because I listen to his songs and I can picture Conte Razor's Cafe, or I can picture Johnny's little seaside inn. All of these
Right.
things that these lines that sound like throwaway lines, I'm there. I'm picturing it. It's a
I
it's
feel,
it
yeah, a lot of his songs that they paint me a picture of the Bay Area or Northern California or a certain
Yeah, that
time
too.
of year,
Yep.
which I
Yep.
love. And that's actually one of the things, kind of one of the last things I want to talk to you about Night Ranger is that for me, it comes down to three things. One, the songs, of course. Two, the incredible guitar hero
Yeah.
shredding guitar work, yet it always fits the song, no
Yep.
matter how over the top the solos might be. Brad is breaking whammy bars, but it
Yep.
still fits the song. And then it comes down to the fact that Jack Blades is just an incredible songwriter. The guy can write a hook like nobody's business.
Oh, like you look at the number of songs in the Night Ranger catalog that are just credited to him.
Yeah,
Like he could just we need another song, 4 in the morning.
the songs are
Like,
effortless,
you know what I mean?
right?
Like, and he
Yeah.
makes it sound easy, but there's a lot of work that goes into
Oh,
crafting
sure.
hooks like that just where every part they pay attention to every part of the song. They don't just like we got a catchy chorus, it doesn't matter what else we put with it. No, every part of the song is a
Yeah, you
hook.
know what it is? They're craftsmen, really,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
song, and
Well,
it's
yeah.
effortless when you hear the song. It's almost instant. You don't have to hear it a second or third time to go, "Oh, I like that." It's like that
They're
hook hits you.
really good at doing at the songs having something to catch your ear right away. Like one of my all-time favorite songs by anybody is "Don't Tell Me You Love Me." The
Yes,
combination of that clean picking guitar with the slamming riffs and the drums, immediately you know what it is. Um, Rumors in the Air starts out with a lot of people think it's keyboard, but it's the guitar swells coming in. That's very distinctive.
right.
Sentimental Street comes in with almost that those classical sounding fanfares. Dun dun
Yeah,
dun. Like
yes.
it grabs your attention right away. And they're really good at doing that. 4 in the morning, it just has to start with that one note. Like,
Yeah.
and
There's a
you're there.
and so many songs. There's a lot of emotion. I mean, to this day, I hear "Goodbye" and it just puts a lump in my throat. That
Yeah,
ballad should have been massive.
and again, there's a good example. It hit number 17. It should have been a number one song.
Right,
What,
right.
why? Like, I don't understand. Like, to me, the heavy lifting was done by the band by giving the label that song, promote this song. That's all
Should
you
be.
got to do. Like that should have been an across the board top five song. It's
Yeah,
it's a beautiful song, and again, they pay attention to every detail. The false ending, you don't want it to end. Like it's just
right.
it's really really good.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
mentioned in the book too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's I there's a few bands that you know, I can see you've got that massive record collection back there behind you. I've got a big collection, but there's just those go-tos where I can pull out anything, just about any of those albums and find something enjoyable, and then other ones where I just can't stop listening to. And that's most of their catalog.
Yeah. There's another thing too. I mean, and this also kills me. And this has something, I mentioned about Dave not getting his kudos for being a great musician and a great singer. You've got Jack Blades and Kelly Keiki who are not similar sounding singers, but they complement each other so well.
Right.
And yet, you know, they both have this just friend. Jack Blades to me is a friendly singer. Like he just sounds like he's talking to you, but he's singing.
Puts you in a good mood.
He puts you in a good mood. And Kelly has just got this effortlessly great soulful voice that just and nobody mentions those guys as influences, which is such a shame. And I wonder if it's because number one, they're in a band with two singers, and
Hmm.
also, both of those guys play instruments too. It's a unique configuration of a band. You don't have I mean, Jack is kind of like the front man, but he plays an instrument. There's no standalone front man. So you've got your rhythm section are your singers, you've got your keyboard player, and then you've got two lead guitar players. It's a really, I can't think of another band that's set
I
up quite like that. You
no,
know,
that's
there's
a
bands where the bass player is the singer, but it's not a five piece. It's not like Night Ranger.
right, and that's a really good point. I mean, what as far as two lead singers come to mind, you'll I'm sure a lot of people think of Kiss, but Paul Stanley's really the front man. Gene might have singing as many songs,
Yeah,
but he's the guy
yeah,
talking to the audience,
right.
and he's when you think of a lead singer, most people would probably think of Paul. But, you know, Kelly sings on their biggest hit, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can't think of another band that has that sort of, you know, front facing dynamic, if you
Yeah,
will.
it is really Triumph is similar
Oh, good
because
point. Yeah.
because you had Rick Emmett who had the high voice playing guitar, and then you had Gilmore on drums that had, a good voice, but a totally different voice. But that's kind of a different situation there too. But for all of this, I mean, to me, and that's another thing that made Night Ranger not quite a hard rock band. And I say this loving all of these bands that I've talked about, but you got a couple of guys that can actually really sing really well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge Rat fan,
Same here.
but
But no,
Stephen Piercy is not a singer's singer.
no. And
I
he can
love
only work in that
Yeah,
band. You know
I
what I mean?
love what he does, but 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 Jack and Kelly can just sing. I don't know how else to say it. Like
Right.
I love Def Leppard. Joe Elliott is not a singer. You
Right.
know what I mean? These guys can actually sing. So that's what makes them closer to bands like Foreigner. But yet I've always thought that because they've always had Brad, but then
Right.
Jeff Watson and whoever the second guitar players. But in the 80s, you had Brad and Jeff. They were on the cover of the guitar magazines all the time.
They're virtuosos.
They had the respect of the metalheads. There are guys that would probably listen to way heavier bands and would never listen to any other band as light as Night Ranger, but they do because of that guitar playing. And
Yeah.
also the fact that Brad was in Ozzy's band, I think gave him so much cred in the metal world
Right.
because once you've been sort of anointed, right, you'll always be thought of as an ex Ozzy guitar player. Look at
Right.
Jake E. Lee. He hasn't,
Yeah.
he was in the band for like two albums. Everybody thinks of him. Yeah, oh yeah, he used to play with Ozzy.
And
Um,
Brad got an incredible amount of respect out of that because, he came in at such a tragic moment, right?
yeah,
And with very little time and just nailed it. And people
yeah,
still talk about how great he was with Ozzy.
yeah. And so, there's so many things that, again, I was like, because I remember thinking there must have been a book about them in the 80s, like one of those junior high
Right.
reading level. You know what I mean?
Right.
Nothing.
Nothing.
So I'm like, well, looks like it's up to me. And I had a lot of help, but I mean, I was really determined. Like, yes, this is the next band I'm doing, and I'm really happy with how it came out. Yeah, and it just again, I can't stop listening to this band, and I've already done the book. Like, I always have to do a serious amount of listening to all the albums before I go into this because I want to make sure that I remember these correctly when I'm coming up with questions, right?
Hmm.
Especially the newer material because stuff that you grew up with when you were a kid, you're always going to know better because those came out at a time when that's all you had to do was listen to that
Yeah. And
music.
that's got a 20 or 30-year head start, right? You've been listening, you've been
Right.
hearing that for so
So
many decades.
you got to really slam those new ones in and get those ingrained. Um, and I just keep going back to them now,
Yeah, same
you
here.
know.
Same
So
here.
it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like work.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
So the Night Ranger book is your fifth book, your newest, your most recent. Before we get out of here, what is next? What are you working on right now?
Well, I've actually got three that are in various
Whoa.
stages of yeah, I've actually got three that I'm currently working on. One of them is another panel book. Two of them are just me writing them, like my Sammy Hagar book, which there I liked that that was a challenge to myself to see if I could do it. Um, and I like how it came out, so I've got that for another couple of bands. And I don't people won't be too terribly surprised if they watch my channel. I think they won't be too terribly surprised on who they're going to be on, but we'll
All right.
those are all slated to come out, you know.
Right. All right. Well, not to grovel, but I'd be more than happy to be drafted into some sort of panel sometime if it's the right band. I think we have
We'll talk after. We'll talk afterwards.
we
Yeah.
love I know it's groveling, but I'm telling you, I read your books and it's just
No,
like
no, I
it's the
like this.
greatest conversations ever, man.
You know, I've well, thank you. But you know, a lot of times it's not the easiest thing to
Sure.
find enough people because when I wanted to do the Sammy Hagar book, because I always thought his solo career's never been talked about the way that I would have liked to talk about it. I know I couldn't find enough people to talk about those early Capitol albums, or for that matter, a lot of the latter day ones. So I said, you know what? I've got a lot I want to say. I'm going to do this one myself. Um, but there, you know, I like both. I like the fact that I've been able to do both. But there is a lot. The panel brings so much that things that I never think of, things that I would never ever think of, comparisons that I would never draw. And even when you get someone who's just started listening to the band, they might actually come in and say, "Did you ever notice this riff kind of sounds like?" And you go, "I've listened to this song for 40 odd years. I've never noticed that before, but he's absolutely right." So it's that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. I love learning more about my favorite bands and
It
music.
deepens my appreciation for it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, so Tim's Vinyl Confessions is the podcast. I know you're all over social media. You can find you under the podcast name, correct?
Yeah, that'll bring me up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Yeah, that's I post daily so stuff from my own collection. I post shorts to YouTube regularly, and I always post 3 new episodes every Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Man, I don't know how you do it. As someone trying to do it myself, I'm very impressed with your output. I love what you put on Facebook. I'm liking stuff and commenting somewhat regularly when Facebook deigns to give it to me in my feed. So it's some great stuff.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.